There you
one
go.
of us has to.
What did
Okay,
you
we're
guys
good.
do last time?
Oscar, I think that's, well, we got it.
Kelsey, can you hear us now? Yep,
There we go.
excellent.
Perfect.
Thank you. So just for the record, we did a roll call. Robert's in transit. Kelsey is online. We did the flag salute and we're at agenda consideration.
I first did, Glenn seconded it. Would you like
Excellent.
to do it again?
No, that's good. Hearing none, we'll call to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Public comment? Do we have any, Diane? We good?
No.
Okay.
No.
Board communication, school board appreciation month.
All right, well, as you walked in, you were greeted with some wonderful
Yeah.
presents and some things from our students. And so being my first board meeting for board appreciation, I'm looking to my esteemed colleagues to help kick off some of the appreciation. So I'm not sure who would like to go first. Stacy raised her hand first.
So the middle school has a superhero thing, because we think it's pretty superhero amazing that you guys are on our school board. And so that describes the drawings that you see, and thank you for the paper and in that for waving when you feel like it at your house, or to make sure everyone knows. And our students kind of got that all together, and we had a lot of kids working on each one.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Kimberly?
The primary school decided to give you an honorary plaque that you can hang on your wall to let everybody know how awesome you are. Since we had that giant one last year with all the signatures, we thought we would bring it down to a more manageable level this year. And we just want to appreciate all of you for all that you do. We thank you, and we hope that this is a real reminder of how great you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let them go, you go ahead and go and then they.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
The next on the agenda.
The interview school has written you a poem and we have a video to go with it.
Maybe.
Maybe, possibly, if not, we can share it with you later.
I can play it.
Yeah, there we go. Let's try it. And then you wanna reshare again first. Convert out. We can try, like, we're gonna try to put the volume on and hope that we don't get feedback because we're recording through that thing, so.
Only part of it, but.
If you guys need to work, I will share it with you guys.
Well, how about you turn your volume off and I'll play it at the same time? Turn it on.
Okay.
Okay, ready then?
No, just a second.
Our school board with gratitude. In January's glow, we pause to see the heart of our school, the roots of our tree. Each member a guide, so steadfast and true. This verse is our thanks for all that you do.
Crystal Rosasville, a garden of wit where insights bloom. Organized drives fill all the rooms. Enthusiastic directs with a helping hand. Crystal, your passion is ever so glad. Proud and farmer at heart, thoughtful and caring, a leader of heart. Students come first with wisdom and skill, a genuine example, so fair and sincere.
Heidi Torian, a listener, wise and leadership, clear. Your thoughtful words we always revere. A mentor, a friend with fairness and grace. Heidi, your service uplifts this place. Stories to share and kindness to show. You'll help us all learn, inspire us to grow. A volunteer spirit to ever so strong. Merle, your heart helps us all move along. Elsie Newkirk. May fathers get our hearts so kind, thoughtful and gentle with kids on your mind. As you come your election through, Kelsey, our school is better with you. Scott, with intelligence, sharp and quick to see, your words and actions shape destiny. Motivated and skilled, a crafter of art, genuine work reflects a giving heart. Robert Rodriguez, generous, energetic, with branching flair, a dentist who listens and deeply cares. New to the fold, but already a star. Robert, your efforts carry us so far.
Each of you brings a gift so unique, a cornerstone strong, the future you seek. With gratitude deep, our hearts are inspired for all that you've done and the dreams you've wired. Thank you, dear board, for the paths that you pave, for the children you guide, and the futures you save. Thank you for all you do, school board members.
The video's there, then you have your phones, and I think I did these ones when they were not much older than that, so. So thank you, everybody.
Well, I don't know if we can top that, but we have a couple, we have a card from the high school to show our appreciation. They have about $15 worth of Starbucks on them.
Oh.
So you can get your caffeine in while you're hard at work.
Thank you.
You know, my heart rates. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have one for you, Kelsey. I wasn't wondering
Oh,
if
you
I
can give
could
that to me.
Okay.
I'll give it to Kelsey. Maybe. No, just kidding. Thank you so much.
Of
That's so
course.
generous. Thank you. We appreciate all the volunteer work you guys.
Well, and I would like to just say a few words of appreciation. So in reflecting back, I want to take us back to our September board retreat and just how much fun that was. I walked away from that, it was a 4-hour meeting, just being very inspired by you because of the level of collaboration and wanting to have an agreement that we felt just worked for both of us as a board superintendent team. And since that time, how students have been at the center of our conversations and been at the center of what we're trying to do here as a district and trying to raise student achievement, focus on the student experience. And I just appreciate having a board that that is so student-centered and just has a deep care for this community. You all have just such a dedication towards the North Marion School District and the communities it represents. And I just appreciate that very much. I'm getting to work with you.
Thank you. All right.
Huh?
Yes.
The bags are from the central office staff and there's mugs in them that are handmade by me, so.
Oh.
Yeah, handcrafted.
You're talented.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have.
I'm not crafty.
Dad
So that
and
makes
mugs,
sense.
that's it, so.
Oh my God. Oh, thank you so much.
That's so nice.
I love that. You're so
Oh, she said that, sorry.
I know. Well, I love mine. Mine's perfect size. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You guys saw the guest lady? Huh? One of these will, for being like that, guest.
I have one of these yet.
For Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it looks
Well,
like
it
it's
should be
connected.
open.
It was just this one.
You got it?
We switched.
Okay. You good? Okay, okay. So moving on to high school ASB report.
So Kaden is in Mexico right now, so you have me and you have Riley, our vice president, and so we will get that going. Shows up, sorry.
You're fine.
Okay, I guess first off is that we have ASB, and ASB is excited to announce that the theme has been decided for our winter formal dance. It is a Sadie's Snowball. That basically means that the girls ask the guys, and that it'll be on February 1st from 7 to 10 p.m. And so, and yeah, we're looking for more adult chaperones. It would be lovely to have anybody. So yeah, just send anyone towards Anita, and we would be happy to have you.
And then moving next on, we have National Art Honor Society. NAHS is in the process of multiple projects over in the primary school, including a project for a covered play area. They're currently on a mission for exterior paint, and any and all donations are welcome for this project.
Can I ask a question? Can it be used or new?
I'm sure they would welcome used stuff, or yeah. Yearbook has finalized the 2025 yearbook cover and are currently focused on getting every student featured in the yearbook at least 3 times.
Whoa. And then Key Club is brainstorming for a classified staff appreciation gift, as well as preparing for their upcoming food drive.
NHS, National Honor Society, is currently focused on their February blood drive and is promoting it and signing up donors.
And then robotics, both the high school and middle school robotics teams have been doing very good so far, and are hoping to be invited to the championship circles and competitions soon, and are very excited for their upcoming tournaments.
And just a little more appreciation towards you guys. Yeah, well, we already finished it out, so. But no, we really appreciate all that you guys do, and really the school wouldn't run as smoothly as it does without you, so thank you. We really appreciate all of you.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Did we have any comments or questions? No? Okay.
I did see
Kim, you had a hand?
Yeah, I have an interesting question about the paint.
Yeah,
They're wanting to collect any and all paint that they can.
Okay.
They're repainting the interior of the numbers for the system for kids lining up for bus to make it more beautiful, and they're doing flowers and lily pads and frogs, and so they're collecting all colors.
oh, great, excellent.
Used or new, doesn't matter.
Okay, exterior paint. All right, Robert entered at 6:15. Robert, everyone here appreciates you. You just missed them raving about you for 15 minutes. And we can thank I5 for it, but you can watch the video online. All right, so moving on, I was told the UNME leadership team was going to pass today. And then,
Of course.
thank you so much, ASB.
Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. And then we have some donations to acknowledge today. And so Mr. Avila had a donation of 5 Chromebooks to OYEN. And we just want to thank you so much for your generosity in caring for our children. The Paul Schneider Living Trust made a $500 donation to assist 3 families within our district. Director Robert Rodriguez made a large donation funding an all-staff luncheon and Coda coffee for lattes, mochas, for the Youth Truth Survey Champions, $2,767. And we thank you so much for prompting that activity and encouraging Youth Truth Survey. So I'd just like to take a moment to thank each one of our donation people so much for caring for our community and giving back to the district. It really makes a difference for all of us. Moving on to the consent agenda. If you've had a moment to read the consent agenda, I would entertain a motion.
Chair,
Wait, sorry,
thank you.
Dan.
So, I just wanted to, because the administrative contracts is something that's normally done in March, I just wanted to, just for any clarification, that we have revamped all of our administrative contracts. We did that to be in accordance with ORS 342-845. And so that's why you're seeing this in January. And the attachment that's on the agenda, you will see that again in 2 months, but it'll say the 25-26 contracts. And what you should see is everybody kind of sliding over where they're at on that. So you will see this in 2 months again, but it'll be for the 25-26 school year.
Thank you, Superintendent. Okay, and I apologize.
Nope.
Totally forgot that. So do I hear a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, business and budget.
I have a couple of things for you tonight. So the first one is real short and the second one won't be. So here we go. This is just a summary of our general fund as of December 31st. Our tax revenue is coming in a little bit higher than expected, but I don't know that that will really matter. The way the state school fund gives you money, it's just all average. When you get it all done, you get so much per student, and so it probably won't make any difference. One thing I am a little concerned with is that the interest rates keep declining, so the interest that I budgeted probably won't come true for our general fund, just because it's declining a little faster than I thought, but we'll see what happens in the next month or so. And
All right.
now we'll talk about the 25-26 budget and getting you started.
Yeah, so I sent out an email to all staff today, so hopefully they are tuning in to watch. And we will be sharing that video, the link to the video after it's done with all staff, along with the information Linda's gonna present tonight. I wanna preface that this is the information that we know right now. And that information can change as new information presents itself. So, you know, a big part of this was Linda being able to do work once the governor's proposed budget was announced. So that's, you know, as those things happen over the next several months, as the legislature comes into session, new information comes that might change what our budget outlook could look like. But it was really important for us to, as soon as we had something with some idea of confidence around based on the governor's proposed budget, it was important that we share that with you. So the first thing important to hear is this is just what we know right now. And the other important thing is that nothing has been decided as far as any future decisions. This is information sharing tonight. There are no major decisions being made tonight or have been made at all. And so with that, I will turn it over to Linda, and then at the end, I'll come back with what some of our next steps after the information's been shared with you.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this big enough that you can see. You're missing two lines, the most important ones. Maybe if I make it smaller. Almost. Okay. So as Dan said, with the information that we got from the governor, the 11.36 billion was the set amount. With that and all the other information, I was able to roll all the salaries and benefits forward for our staff, as we are staffed now for the most part with our leave of absence people's in and things like that. We're basically $2.8 million short for next year's budget. So we have a lot of work to do to balance that. I don't believe we'll end at the 11.36 billion. Usually it goes up from the governor's budget, but I don't believe that we'll get enough to cover that 2.8 billion. We would need $2 billion more to do that for North Marion. So that's probably not ever going to happen. COSA, OASBO, OSBA, all of those people are working with the legislator and trying to let them know that with the PERS increases and the declining enrollment and our added costs for SPED students, et cetera, that there's a lot of districts that won't be making it, that we need to be making reductions to balance the budget. So hopefully with their work, we'll get a little bit more money, but we don't know what that will be, and we need to base it on what we know at the moment. We'll know more about the first Monday in March. Of course, as they work, I think they start the 21st or 22nd of this month.
Mm-hmm.
As they get going, we might hear some rumblings about what they're thinking. How'd we get here? Declining enrollment since 15-16 has not helped us at all. We're down 427 students, and that's at a little over $11,000 a person, a student. So it's $500,000 this year and a little less than that last year, and it keeps going. If you go back to 15-16, that's when we had the biggest enrollment. First increases, just for North Marion, $1.3 million this year, for the 25-26, higher than this year. So you have your normal cost for PERS, it's gonna be $1.3 million higher. So that's a big piece of it. And then we've been giving larger COLAs than we have ever in the past, trying to be competitive with our regional counterparts. You put that all together and we're at the point we're at. It's not sustainable the way we're running the school at the moment with the staff we have and the declining enrollment and all these things I've mentioned. So we're gonna, like Dan said, we're working on how to get that somewhere, but I want to give you these numbers so people know. If we get 100 million more, like if you're hearing the legislature talk, well, let's give them another 100. It means $138,000 to North Marion. So we need a lot more to make that. We need $2 billion more to make up the 2.8, as you can see by this spreadsheet. So I put in a few different ones in a couple more spreadsheets. Pay attention to those colors. They're coded for the reductions that we are thinking of we could do to make this work. So that's just an important piece of information for anybody, the public or any of us, so that we know what 100 million means. We're hoping to get at least $500,000 and $500 million, but we don't know. I want to just show you a quick picture of our enrollment. This is our official enrollment for October. Put this out every year for you guys, but we're expecting to be at about 1565 October of 2025, and we had been at 1992. So you can see that's a difference of 427 students. If our enrollment continues declining like it has been over here for the kindergarten and those grades don't go up, we could be seeing in the next 4 years a decline of 640 students. So that'll be really big. So we have to do something now to sustain ourselves. The only hope I have is maybe more babies were born during COVID and we'll get a bigger kindergarten class, but I think it's wishful thinking. That's not what anything's showing us. So let's go to the sheet that I guess when I presented this to our administrators, it was a little bit shocking. So I have taken the governor's budget, which is the green, or what if we get more, the 11.96, or what if we get a 12.36? This spreadsheet then shows you, to make this smaller, I'm so sorry, I wanted it big enough that you could actually read it. How's that? Yes, can you?
I can't
No.
do anything on my end,
All
other
right.
than to go back and forth.
Something.
Maybe,
We hide all the other stuff on
let
top.
me see if I can. If that helps. There we go. Anyway, so, as you can see, here's the 11.36 in the green, and that's where we're off, we would be off the $2.8 million, the amount needed to balance. If we get the 11.96, it's 1,990. If we get $1 billion more, which I don't believe we will, it's $1.4 million that we're short. So I just want to show you this interactive sheet to kind of give you an idea of what it would take to balance. So if we all started making reductions, maybe we could save 25,000 here, 50 there, that kind of thing, then it'll get you somewhere. I'm so sorry, but let me see if I can make this bigger. There, now you can see all the numbers. So about halfway down the reduction in expenses, you'll see the average administrator cost, low end of the teacher cost, low end of a classified cost. And you can see over here in this column that just has some numbers. That's calculating out into those spreadsheets to show you what it would take to get somewhere. So I'm just going to do a little bit of playing to give you an idea of what it actually will take to get balanced, if we don't get any more money than what we have. So if we reduce administrators by 2, teachers by 8, classified by 8, and we don't give out, say, tuition reimbursement and some of those other things that are in that pink color, which have to be negotiated, the no personal leave, the cost of 1 day, if we had reduced 7 days, what if everybody, the COLA is only given for half a year, those sorts of things, we're still $130,000 short. And I based this on a contingency of 3.5%. We were at 4.5% this year. So it's bleak information. We're at the point where we can't sustain ourselves and we need to do something to get there. I do want to mention that if days are what we cut, that really doesn't solve the problem, because this is a problem for the whole biennium and probably further into the future, because I don't see our PERS rates going down anytime soon. So these PERS rates, it's not just 1.3 million for the biennium, it's for the year. And so next year it'll be 1.3 million. Now, that cost will fluctuate if we reduce staff and those sorts of things, because it changes with our salaries. But that's where we're at. I know it's not a nice place to be, but we're looking at every reduction we can make. Everything's on the table. We'll probably be cutting programs. We are hoping that we can get our staff to let us know when they will be resigning or retiring sooner rather than later, because that will save the next person. But we're looking at everything. Dan and I will be doing a lot more talking to our staff and everyone else. Am I missing anything?
I don't think so. I think to highlight a couple key things from this is that I think it's important to know that the contingency went from 4.5 to 3.5.
4.5 to 3.
4.5 to 3.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's an important note as we go into budgeting process of how narrowing that down, which I think in this context is appropriate in order to save jobs, but also considering the fact that as a board looking into the future, not being able to go below something like that. And obviously that goes through the budgeting process, in April and May and those decisions. But I think that's important to call out that these cuts also include that contingency and also thinking long-term. I think it's also important to reiterate 2 things about what's in pink there is those are negotiated agreements that we have with with our two associations. So any changes to those need to be negotiated. And so that's why it's important to say, reiterate, nothing has been decided. You know, Linda has come up with these are things we've done in the past, is what she's told me, that when we've had to do this, some of them, you know, and identifying, are there conversations to be started with our associations in terms of those kinds of things. So really you can look at those, some of this as a brainstorm, but I think the bigger part is you watched Linda change those calculations and still seeing us not get to the 2.8 number of how sobering this is when you start increasing those numbers and you're still not quite getting there. So to give you an idea of how hard this work will be over the next several months.
I want to reiterate what we've said twice, but I want to make sure that the public knows and the staff that are watching, the people that are here, none of this has been settled. This is just so you can see the effect of doing what I have on this spreadsheet. There is no decisions have been made. Our administrators and department heads do know that we won't be spending very much money from now until the end of the year, and we will be saving wherever we can. But as far as what's for next year, we haven't decided on any of this information. We will be looking at class sizes and everything else to get a balanced budget.
So our next steps are, we have meetings scheduled, both associations, or at least we have one with classified scheduled for a couple of weeks from now. And then I've notified UNME of trying to get a meeting scheduled for sometime in the next week or two. Linda and I will be scheduling school visits to go meet with staff to share with them this information and what we will want to do to try to be, as I close my email today, is we want to give as timely information as possible and as accurate as possible. And sometimes those two things can run into conflict with each other. When you're trying to get information out, you got to make sure it's accurate. So it's trying to make sure that we are doing both of those things at the same time, of being, as soon as we know information, and making sure that it's reliable information. So
I do want to note also the calculator I use to get to our state school fund, which is our biggest amount of money in our general fund, is not the most up to date because the legislature hasn't decided what our carved outs and those things are. So those numbers could change, but it's close enough that we know we have to get working on this.
And so, you know, this is a lot of information to take in and to try to make sense of it. And so this was not intended to be a come and present to you and then be really prepared to answer any questions. We have a work session scheduled in 2 weeks. And so through my regular communications with you, I will want to start soliciting questions from you. So at the work session, we can be more prepared to answer them. So this was not intended to be a Q&A where we'd be prepared to answer anything. And so we do want to be able to answer what questions you have at the work session in 2 weeks. When you've had a chance to process this, submit us your questions and then we can be prepared to respond to them. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Linda because she spent most of her winter break putting this together because this initially was intended for the work session to be a presentation at the end of January. We thought that that's kind of when we would be ready. And, you know, once she had that budget from the governor, really went to work, working almost every day over winter break, and contacted me and said, I think we ought to, and I'll be ready to do this tonight. So huge credit to Linda for doing that. And not only huge credit for Linda for doing that, but you did not hear having to make reductions in this year's budget. And that goes to her incredible work over the years to make sure that we're not in a position where we're having to pivot in the middle of the year, because other districts have had to do that. And that is incredibly disruptive and everything. She has given us the best timing and runway that we can have for our district and its employees. And so I really wanted to thank Linda for not only giving up so much of her time over winter break, but just the fact that we're in a position where we're not having to touch this year's budget, other than to try to work towards next year, but we don't have to touch this year's budget to make it through the year. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, can I ask one thing? It's not specific. It's always the situation we get in where the budgeting has to happen prior to Sendine. And Sendine is that's like the last item they deal with, or at least it has been for quite a few years. So is the strategy to sort of go someplace in the middle and then make that adjustment when the actual funding number comes in?
I don't think we're to the strategy yet.
Okay.
We're still soaking in the amount of money that we're looking at. I would like to go a little bit higher than what they're saying, but be prepared for it to be exactly what it is.
Okay. Okay.
But I would like to.
Because that's, I mean, part of that is your experience and your prognostication for how many years you've done this in kind of and seeing, probably where we land at, so.
Yeah, my head tells me something, but I'm not gonna say it publicly.
Merle?
I had penned earlier when I was looking at this, regarding the contingency fund, from where are those funds derived? Are they budgeted from previous year?
That's a general fund amount, okay,
That
so.
you always do that, you allow this contingency for emergencies or just this kind of thing?
Unknowns, emergencies, that sort of thing. There's varying philosophies on what your contingency should be, anywhere from 5 to 10%. We've been as low as $200,000. So,
And that was your reference to not 4.5, but now 3%?
Yes.
Of budget.
And we had held for quite a few years at 6%. I'm really comfortable at 6%, but I can do 3 in this environment. I think it's over $100,000 per percent. I think 6% is around 800 with this budget right now, but if we reduce it, that would be a little lower. But those are people we're talking about and educating our students. And I think that in this age, you would be talking about $800,000 more if you wanted a 6% contingency, and it's just not doable at this time.
And if I can indulge one more question, it looked like the numbers for enrollment. October is the benchmark.
October 1st is official enrollment.
And that just happens to be the lowest. It's higher on either side.
No.
Nothing we can do about that?
No,
according to the spreadsheet?
it's not. September is higher because we don't have the 10-day drops in usually when we report to you guys.
Okay.
I usually budget between 95 and 98% of our actual enrollment October 1. Because you only get paid if a student is here the whole entire year. You get that $11,000 plus dollars. If they are gone for more than 10 days, you have to drop them and then re-enroll them. Or if they leave, and we have a lot of interaction with, we have a lot of students that take the whole month of December off, and so they're all dropped, and then we put them back in when they get back. Take extended vacations and time off. So I think we've been pushing 97-ish%. I can't remember what I said back in October, but I think it's between 95 and 98.
So by doing that, you would usually receive actually a little bit more than you budget.
Hopefully, you're always hopeful, otherwise they're gonna take it away from you in May for the prior year.
And the 1575
Or 65, is it?
Yeah, 1565.
1565, so that was a number that Linda and I talked about and kind of debated on where to put that number. And that is a little bit on the lower side of the range that we were looking at, not the lowest, but it was a little on the lower end of the range that Linda and I looked at. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Dan, just a question for you. Your interaction with your counterparts in districts around us, and this is not just North Marion, this is, I'm assuming.
No, this is everywhere. I think that the PERS impact varies from place to place, but everybody is dealing with, is dealing with the declining enrollment.
Yeah.
And also the need to stay regionally competitive with what we're offering and investing in our employees. So I think those two things are, I think the X factor starts to become PERS when we're, you know, over 1 million and others are not.
Yeah.
So, so that does make a big difference.
Robert, any questions?
No.
Heidi? Jenny?
No questions, but I'll echo Dan's thanks for working so hard on this. Appreciate it.
And I'll say it too, Linda, like, your commitment to North Marion is probably one of those that's gonna be irreplaceable at some point. Yeah. And I know that Kelsey, I spoke to her beforehand and she will not be having any questions. So moving on, thank you, Linda, again. Dan, any last, you're good?
Nope. Good.
Okay. No board action, so we will move down to district operations report.
Right, so if you could pull up the. Oh, okay, gotcha, I wasn't sure who was steering.
Fast, sorry.
So while they're pulling that up, I'm gonna kind of circle back a little bit to the conversation we just had and realizing that shifting gears from such a sobering message to a little bit more operational stuff can seem, you know, can seem awkward. You could even call it tone deaf. I mean, you could say a lot of things about it. I'm gonna touch on that in just a minute, my second presentation. So I just want to acknowledge that it can be awkward to go from something so sobering to, you know, what's coming next. And so I am going to touch on that in just a minute. Before I launch into this leadership selection process, we have two incredibly important hires to do this spring. But I want to take a minute to acknowledge Deanne and Linda, because we're talking about the high school principal position and the business manager position. That these two incredible individuals have dedicated their entire careers to this district. We're not talking about just someone who's filled the role for a time and moving on to the next thing, but two people that have dedicated their entire careers to the North Marion School District. And it's, I mean, kind of like you said there, Crystal, the irreplaceability of these two people is going to be felt. You know, the legacy and the lives impacted. You don't spend 20 to 30 years in a place and not have impacted an incredible, literally generations of kids and their kids from their years of service. And I think at the end of the day, what strikes me is just how trustworthy these two people are. Haven't got to spend a ton of time with them, but you know, trust is consistency over time, and these two people, in my limited experience, have been incredibly consistent each and every time, which leads me to know why people trust them so much. And so before I launch into how we look for the people to replace them, I'd be remiss if I did not thank them for their years of service. And I know there's going to be more opportunities to do that in the future as the year winds down, but I really thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay. So so one of the things is this slide says is hiring outstanding instructional leaders or just leaders in general never happens by accident. And so you really need to be intentional when you go to seek out to hire leaders into your organization. And so go ahead, next slide. And so here's what our hiring practices should aim to do. First of all, I really feel like leaders have to be effective communicators. So one of the things is assessing how they communicate, and that is in multiple ways, not just how they speak, how they write, And how they speak in a variety of different settings. And so communication is something really critical. We also want to make sure that the candidate's strengths align to our needs and our values. So making sure that what we need in a leader is also what that person brings to the table. We should have some predetermined leadership traits that are based on research and stakeholder input. So what is it that we're looking for and gathering that information? So, and I'll probably circle back to that a little bit later in this presentation. So we should have multiple stages to demonstrate a broad array of skills. No one should be able to talk their way into a job. We should see a lot of different skills before we bring them on board. And we should have task-based types of evidence. So seeing people in a variety of different settings to be able to say they're skilled to do the job. And all of this is about mitigating risk, that we hire the best possible person for the position. So next slide. There's a little bit more of taking what I just said in more of a timeline. So we need to gather staff and student input. We need to establish those traits. We need to design the selection process. We have to post the position. We have to get the candidates selected, and then we implement a selection process, and then we get to a final decision. And so here are 7 steps in doing this from the time the job is posted, applicants apply, is do a blind scoring of applicants by my cabinet, possibly others. And when I say by blind scoring is we all look at, when you look at application materials, some people gravitate towards the letters of recommendation. Some people don't care about that. They say, oh, that you just get the people that like you to write those things. And then you get people that I want to see certain levels of experience. And so one thing when I say blind scoring is kind of having a little bit of a rubric and a rating scale. And I'll go through and I'll rate people 1 to 4, let's say. And then I might have Des do that same sort of thing. And then we look to see, you know, everybody that if one's the best ranking, okay, so that's definitely somebody that we're bringing in, but we're getting multiple perspectives because the lens I look through might be different than Des, might be different than Cheryl. So that's what I mean by that piece. The next one is an on-demand writing prompt and screening interview. And so that's just something I've done in the past where really scheduling, planning around how we're going to do this, and then scheduling interviews that also include the person having to submit something in writing before they actually come in right when they're coming in for the interview. So I can kind of explain that as we get closer to that, but I think having an on-demand writing prompt is to see how well they write in the moment. And then a screening interview, a performance task, and this is something where giving someone a really difficult scenario and having them have to present it to a group of people, really, you get a lot of information on how they tackle problems, how they communicate those problems, and then how you ask questions about why did you decide to do it that way? Or, you know, and then being able to challenge them based on what they did. I don't really believe in having the preset set of interview questions. You can tease those out. If you have certain things you're looking for, you can tease those out in the writing prompt that you ask them. You can tease those out in the performance task that you get them. Because one of the things in hiring practices is you have to keep it the same for everybody. But if a candidate presents information to you, you are fully able to ask them questions based on the information. So having them give you 30 minutes of information, and then you can ask your questions based on how they presented that information. Q&A with staff, no admin present. I'll explain that in a slide or so. And then debriefing with the staff. And that's a little bit more geared towards the principal position. And then formal reference checks. If you go up and look at step 1, informal reference checks, that's more of like you can send out a screener and a rating scale to people for people to complete. That I call that informal. And the reason why I wait for formal reference checks to towards the end is that by doing this process, you get a lot of information. So when I call someone for reference checks, I want the most information I have about that candidate before I make those phone calls, because I want to be able to challenge or ask questions based on all the stuff I've asked. Not just make a cold call to say, is this person good or not? I want to be able to actually ask questions based on things that I've observed throughout this process. Site visits to where they currently work, if possible, and then a final interview with the superintendent's cabinet. So that's the process. So here is our timeline for the high school principal position. So we're looking to post at the very end of this month, have it open for about 3 weeks or so, conduct those screening interviews, case study presentations. So the Q&A with staff. So one of the things that I've not always been a big fan about having 1 or 2 people from a staff be on a committee. And then especially if you're in a school position where you're giving that responsibility to 1 or 2 teachers, and expecting them to be the kind of the conduit between the staff and what's happening. I would rather take the candidates, and I'm not sure how many we would be down to by this point, but actually let the whole staff interact with those candidates, with me not in the room. Because people will act different if the administrative team is in the room. And basically let the staff have 30 or so minutes with that candidate, and then me come in afterwards, tell me what you think. And so to where you get the entire staff, not just a vocal 1 or 2, have the entire staff be able to give their assessment or feedback to me about what they thought about a candidate. I just think that's a better way of doing it versus charging 1 or 2 staff members to be the ambassadors of an entire school staff. So that's what was meant by, Q&A with staff, no admin present, is allowing the staff to work to interact with potentially their future leader without me in the room. And then those final stages would be maybe site visits, and maybe there's other aspects that we want to tease out there before we make that decision, and hopefully be able to make an announcement by March 17th. So I do want to call out the important asterisk that dates are tentative and subject to change. So this was just our best thinking at the moment. So not setting any of this stuff in stone, but this gives you kind of at least a, hey, when do we want to go out and when do we want to have a decision made by? And then next slide, kind of very similar. Obviously, it's a little bit different when you don't have an entire staff of teachers that this person would be working with. So modified some of this a little bit, but in talking to Linda today, really if we could get that decision done before spring break would really be ideal. So we ramped up things from what this was a little bit earlier, but this is where we would like to be. So questions on the process?
Robert? Merle?
Are you anticipating there would be coaching time with present staff and new staff? Orientation?
That's a great question. So for the principal position, to the best degree that we could, if we were able to hire someone by March 17th, then what can we do between, them most likely finishing out their current job and starting, but worked, see what we could do there to try to do that. That's not too disruptive to where they might be coming from. I won't ask Deanne how long she's gonna help coach, because every time I ask, I don't get the answer I want, so. So we'll just leave that there, but so I've asked if she's wanted to do any consulting next year, but I can't say what she told me. But I think a little bit of help with the new candidate, I'm sure she'll be fine with that. I'm gonna pay for that tomorrow. But for the business manager position, we haven't solidified anything yet, but you know, Linda and I have talked about what if this, what if that, but you know, I've heard you say, I'm just down the road a little bit, I think I've heard.
And I heard myself say that I would be willing to come back to help with the audit since they would be my members.
Okay, so, yes, yeah, there you go.
That's Linda's asterisk.
Yeah, that's Linda's asterisk, there you go. So, we would try to without, you know, depending on where they're coming from and what kind of flexibility we have, but that's a great question.
Glenn?
Good.
Heidi? No questions. Jenny? None? We're good?
All right. So next presentation, so, again, one of the challenges that we will face going into the next few months is how do we focus on our biggest challenge, which is balancing next year's budget, and how we also not perseverate on something that is gonna cause anxiety. Also realizing we have other tasks to attend to, like hiring, like building a strategic plan. So I just wanna call out that moving on to other subjects doesn't mean I'm not acknowledging or we're not going to tackle the most important thing, which is the budget, but also trying, how do we balance, you know, that, and there is other work to do. So I just wanna call that out, that this will be a challenge for the whole district to figure out how we balance those two things. So let's see here, hold on. So this is just a really short presentation on my idea on building a strategic plan. And so it's pretty short and straightforward. And so I will take your feedback, is that we're gonna build upon the work that's already been done, which our current strategic plan provides us a philosophical base that celebrates the diversity of our community. It's centered on culturally relevant, culturally responsive practices and focused on systems building. And so our new plan will build upon those things and uphold our community values. So process and timeline. So over the next few months, we're gonna be gathering feedback from families, staff, stakeholders, and students. And we're gonna try to draw correlations between what we're seeing in the youth truth data, their feedback, for next year or for the next strategic plan, to really focus on the academic achievement goals based on what correlations can we gather from the youth truth data along with our academic achievement data. And that's gonna be the basis of our strategic plan. So I'm gonna say that one more time. You know, what feedback did we gather from youth truth and the stakeholder feedback and our academic data? And that'll be the basis of our strategic plan. So process and timeline, so we will work with small teams to rework goals, share the feedback with stakeholders, share with stakeholders for feedback. And then my goal would be to share a draft of the strategic plan to the board on May 12th for final adoption at the end of June. So I wanna, before I go to the next slide, I just wanna call out that a lot of districts will pay for consultants to do this. Districts will have committees to do this. I really feel like, well, one, we can't afford a consultant. And two, I don't think that we necessarily need a consultant. I think there's enough talent in this room and amongst our hallways and in our classrooms that we can build our own strategic plan without hiring someone else to facilitate that process. I also, similar to kind of the hiring piece, when you charge a committee, you don't always feel like you're putting that group of people in a position to try to speak on behalf of others. And I don't necessarily think that you always get the information from everybody. And so one of the things, starting next week, I will be at the middle school. And so my first effort is to go to all the schools and start getting input from the youth truth data to get, that's the kind of the first step, and then start getting community and parent feedback from the youth truth data. And then once I've gathered all that information, then basically go back out and say, is this what I heard? And does this accurately reflect the goals that we should have in our strategic plan? And so I should be able to do that by May 12th when I share a draft with you. So then the next slide. So the key changes from the previous process is this is gonna be a data-centered strategic plan focused on measurable data. And so measurable impacts as well as measurable actions. You've heard me say before that I want to be able to measure the impact of adult actions. So if the adults do this, we should see an increase in student performance. So that's really the type of strategic plan I want to have that's focused on actions that we believe will lead to improvement in student data. And ultimately, it's designed to provide a united focus on academic achievement and the student experience. So I don't want it necessarily, it's important that it's focused on achievement data, but also the experience of our students and what they tell us, how they like school is important as well. And so part of that will also incorporate what do our students say about their experience. That's it.
Robert, you want me to start with Jenny this time?
No, I'm good. That was fast and good, I like it.
Merle?
It reminds me of the hedgehog concept. Facing the brutal reality of budget, but passionate about where we're going. Reading, I guess, in my mind.
So for those who don't know, the hedgehog concept comes from the book Good to Great. And the hedgehog focuses on one thing and tries to do that really well. So I appreciate you applying that, Merle.
What?
I'm good, thanks.
Heidi?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in how you see the board's involvement in this.
Great question. As I start to have the parent listening sessions, I would love for board members to be at those if we could, once I get those scheduled and whatnot, get those on your calendars, and if we could try to spread the wealth a little bit and have board members, because it would be great for you to be able to speak to the things you heard at that, so that when I present this back to you, you can validate that that's exactly what I heard. Or tell me, no, that's not.
Okay, I'm just gonna put in my 2 cents.
Yeah.
So I've been involved in several strategic plans because of my long-term involvement on the board. And in previous ones, the board has been afforded the opportunity if they wanted to be, to attend meetings, to have input on the direction, to have some involvement. And in the last one, we weren't really given any opportunity for involvement. We were just kind of asked to rubber stamp it. And frankly, it was hard for me to feel that I had some skin in the game, that we had a part of that, because we weren't really given much of an opportunity to be involved in it. So anytime you have an opportunity, if any board members want to attend things or whatever, I'd appreciate opportunities to be more involved in it this time.
I really appreciate that feedback, and I will try to make sure I incorporate
Just my
that.
opinion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback.
Jenny?
No, I'm excited about, the last one I wasn't here for, so I'm excited to see the process and how that comes out. I'm really excited to see the youth truth data, love data. So, yay, go team.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Heidi said. It definitely, I was anti-rubber stamp. So, per usual. But, so, anything else?
I think that's it.
It was a short meeting, but I feel like we have a ton to process. Okay, just a quick reminder from the chair that your policy questions for submission are due January 16th. So if you haven't started reading, start reading.
We got 3 days.
Yeah.
And I will say, we got an email from OSBA today, and so Diane and I will be working on an email to you tomorrow that some of those policies from OSBA from the November are getting pulled back. So, sorry if you already got them done, but so we will be, some of those policies will not be up for discussion in 2 weeks, about 8.
Will you give us a link to the
Yes.
new?
We'll update everything. Try to get that out to you tomorrow. We just got that email today.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead, Heidi.
Can we get a copy or a link of the information that Linda presented tonight on the?
Yes.
We will get that to you.
Yes, I'll put it all out tomorrow.
Thank you.
Any other last minutes before we adjourn? No? Okay, adjourn at 7:07 PM.